I know it's an ask, but I know you guys, if anybody, are the right people to ask to be with each other, to be with our clients, to try to come with the best outcome we could think of in this situation. Thank you, and my heart is with you, and it's really hard for me to deliver this message, but I so appreciate all the things you've done for me and for SVB over so many years. Thank you.
Yesterday, some of the biggest banks in this country, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, collectively lost more than $50 billion in market value in one day. That's quite a hit. On the other hand, those banks still exist, and you can't say that for Silicon Valley Bank. As of this morning, Silicon Valley Bank, or SVB, has gone under completely. That makes the second biggest bank failure in the history of this country. And it's significant. SVB financed nearly half of all venture-backed healthcare and technology companies in the United States. It also apparently held significant cash reserves for some of the biggest cryptocurrencies, and it's now gone.
But also the stringent changes in capital requirements where the banks were forced to hold treasuries. So essentially, when money starts going out of the door in deposits, these banks like SVB are sitting on losses. And so when you have to start realizing those losses, boom, you need to raise capital. It's very simple. But I want you to listen to Janet Yellen. She was the Treasury Secretary. And she's saying, oh, no, don't worry. This is isolated. Listen to this.
I will just say you mentioned Silicon Valley Bank. There are recent developments that concern a few banks that I'm monitoring very carefully. And when banks experience financial losses, it is and should be a matter of concern.
Silicon Valley Bank was a really extreme example of what happens when the Federal Reserve hikes interest rates, and it was compounded by the fact that the bank has this concentration in startups.
The internet and financial world is abuzz. How did Silicon Valley Bank suddenly collapse over 2 days? Quote, the company's downward spiral began late Wednesday when it surprised investors with news that it needed to raise $2.25 billion to shore up its balance sheet. All told, customers withdrew a staggering $42 billion of deposits by the end of Thursday, according to a California regulatory filing. End quote. Really? Now why would that be? A perfectly good bank. For 5 years running, Forbes named it the Bank of the Year for 5 years running. There are multiple theories flying around. People are trying to link it to exposure to crypto and Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. Others state it's a complex set of factors to do with the recession and less demand for technology. And SVB, or Silicon Valley Bank, was obviously a heavy Silicon Valley type of bank. Others point out to the heavy Israeli startup money held in Silicon Valley bank accounts who just happened to be protesting heavily against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's activities in Israel. You really shouldn't upset Bibi. Netanyahu represents a giant Likud-based drug trafficking ring operating for decades all over the world. It's advisable not to upset him and his City of London crew. That crew also includes Hein Kissinger and Rupert Murdoch, the multi-billion-dollar alt-media star. That's sarcasm, by the way. Tucker Carlson has a lot to say about this story. Yes, he's quite an alt-media star, and believe me, this is not a right-left thing. The other side is also ludicrously laughable, but it's the fact that so many are turning to Fox News when it clearly hates Donald Trump.
This is the Tucker Carlson America Sees on Camera.
The outcome of our presidential election was seized from the hands of voters.
But new court documents revealing a very different Carlson behind the scenes. Texting a producer on January 4th, 2021, just 2 days before the Capitol attack, saying of Trump, "I hate him passionately. I can't handle much more of this." We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights. Admitting what a disaster it's been is too tough to digest. But come on, there isn't really an upside to Trump. Those private remarks, a total contrast to Carlson's public comments, like these at a conservative event just a few months ago.
I actually love Donald Trump as a guy. I'm so grateful that Donald Trump ran in 2016. Donald Trump completely changed my view of everything.
His private messages were released as part of Dominion Voting System's $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against the right-wing network, revealing that Fox News stars and top executives didn't actually believe the lie they put on air that the 2020 election was stolen. But amid falling ratings, the network continued to promote Trump and his lies.
Feel the love, the intense, beautiful love.
And is trying to get rid of him, along with Rupert Murdoch and Heinz Kishin, to replace him with Ron DeSantis, or God forbid, Rhino Republican and Governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu. All these occult media stars. These multitude of factors sure sound feasible, but I have another theory, and it involves this little crappy office block in Concord, New Hampshire, USA. What is that little office block? That's the home of CT Corporation System. Wow, you'd think this giant, multi-billion-dollar private equity fund would have a better office. Looks like one of those dodgy little offices out of Panama or, the Virgin Islands or, the Cayman Islands, run by some 78-year-old couple in them highlands somewhere. I mean, come on, you can see where this is going. Wait for it. So what am I getting at? Silicon Valley Bank is a giant depository of New Hampshire drug money. Only a tiny portion of the money was insured and under $250,000 US. The rest of the deposits, 97% of them, are giant drug money accounts in the billions, and the cartel started pulling it out. Why? To punish naughty leftist progressive equity and inclusion infatuated Israeli startups who hate Bibi? Could that be it? I don't think so. No, we put to you the feds are after the money due to Mike Gill's revelations, and the infestation of corrupt politicians have warned the account holders to get their money out. Now. No one removes their money overseas outside the US banking system at this stage of the world economy game. There is nowhere to go. Except maybe Israel? Now remember, SVB or Silicon Valley Bank and many of the other banks now involved in the sudden collapse are flush with the accounts of Israeli startup tech companies. 500 of them. Wow, that's a lot in Silicon Valley Bank alone. That's also a great way to launder drug money. After all, 80% of tech startups fail, and if the money is all in Israel, it's safely stashed away. Or in fact, it's all heading back to Israel as we speak. The US economy dominates and always will, no matter the fantasies of the BRICS lovers. The giant US military-industrial complex ensures the big money floods into US banks, except when you have incontrovertible proof, as well as a public groundswell of interest, demanding the giant New Hampshire drug and money laundering operators are brought to account, all $932 billion of it. Let's talk about New Hampshire and the Pandora Papers in this article from the New Hampshire Business Review and journalist Bob Sanders, titled, What the Pandora Papers Say About New Hampshire. It was published on the 27th of October 2021. $932.5 billion. That's the value of assets under management by a rapidly growing trust industry ostensibly based in New Hampshire. They have increased by more than $250 billion in just the last year, and it's not a complete total. The past year's infusion is triple the amount reportedly going into South Dakota, where several trusts have been scrutinized after the release earlier this month of the so-called Pandora Papers. Those papers, the latest of a series of massive leaks, document and expose the movement of nefarious money shielded by foreign trusts by people looking to avoid taxes and scrutiny. Some of that money came from politicians, kings and billionaires and was used for questionable, if not criminal, purposes. Lately, that money has been coming to the United States in trust havens, notably South Dakota, whose loose rules and regulations rival the most notorious offshore jurisdictions. In coverage about the Pandora Papers, New Hampshire has been mentioned as a place where it is easy to form trusts, but in some ways the state has overtaken South Dakota as the premier place to secretly stash foreign assets, both in trusts and in relatively new and even less regulated family law foundations. End quote. It's interesting to note that Jerry Little, banking commissioner in charge of all financial audits in New Hampshire, says this in the article. Quote, if we do find out something is going on here, it will probably be because of the Pandora Papers, he said, because of the extreme amount of confidentiality written into the state's law. Wow. The banking commissioner in charge of regulating all banks and financial institutions doesn't know what's in New Hampshire. I bet he knows what's in your bank account, and you better have your taxes right. You'll be swatted and taken to jail. But these are the rules for others. They don't even hide this. Mike Gill had extensive dealings with Jerry Little in New Hampshire, and he is right up there at the top of the New Hampshire cartel. They all are, including Rhino Governor Chris Sununu. They are all totally corrupt, and that includes Jerry Little.
Do you know how much information I've got, for instance, on all these auto loans? Get these people in the back too. With all the, do you know that they've been laundering money through that? Drug money? Now you don't want to audit them anymore, right? Isn't that your law? You passed the law. Isn't that your bill? What? Is that your bill? Are you kidding me? Oh, I'm paying you. But I'm also sending you to jail. You're okay with that? Because I am. Got a meeting with Mr. Trump, right, Mr. Trump? We take out little. You take out the cover for the drug laundering, right? I told you about immunities. We have an immunity, and it's not your name, but here you go. Here's the check, right? All set? There you go. Thank you. No, don't shake my f***ing hand. I'm going to put you in jail. You think you assholes think this is funny?
He knows exactly what's going on. Previous to Jerry Little being appointed by Governor Sununu in 2016 was Glenn Perlow. He was the banking commissioner working closely with Democrat operators Bill and Janine Shaheen. He was the man responsible for endless, harassing audits of Mike's bank accounts. All the while, the little viper was covering for the giant New Hampshire drug and drug money laundering operation. As part of the $50 million payout to Mike Gill in return for his silence was a release for Glenn Perlow, meaning all documents relating to him must be returned to the insurer paying Mike the $50 million, and Mike could say nothing about him, ever. Also, along with many others on the $50 million confidentiality agreement, including Bill Shaheen and all the usual players, Andrew Cruz, Deacon Agnost, Alex Walker, Bill Grana, to name a few. It even includes his wife's therapist. They were totally covering up the incident as if it had never happened. That's what the $50 million was for. But with the Mike Gill revelations gaining new traction and a new social network dialing in, some in very interesting places, certain foreign account holders are panicking. And the corrupt account holders and their friends are running for the door, and it ain't stopping. But that's okay. The United States Marine Corps and the US 5th and 6th Fleet can go and get it back. Remember, money is never lost. It's always transferred. One of the worst words you can ever use in finance is lost money. It's never lost money. It's transferred. It's somewhere else. So who has it? They love to say money is lost because that means it's lost. So there's no need to go looking for it. The money is not lost. It's transferred. Just like 2008, $5 trillion was not lost out of the US economy. It was transferred out of the US economy. So go get it. I have a few ideas about where it is. To understand what's happening, the missing link and all the analysis, I want you to look at what Silicon Valley Bank bought in 2021. Boston Private Bank and Trust Company is a registered company in the state of New Hampshire. Yeah, now you're getting it. It's got a big, beautiful office in Boston, Massachusetts, befitting a giant multi-billion-dollar company. However, its agent is CT Corporation System in Concord, New Hampshire. That's just up the road from Bedford, where Bill Shaheen and all the gang hang out. Now you're getting it. So what exactly is an agent in relation to a corporate financial structure? An LLC registered agent is an individual or entity designated by an active company, such as a limited liability company or a corporation or any other entity type, to receive service of process notices, government correspondence and compliance-related documents on behalf of the company. While generally the term agent means someone authorized to represent an individual or an entity or enter into transactions for an individual or an entity, registered agents don't have a similar mandate. The registered agent for an LLC has one primary function: to be an agent for service of process, as well as receiving other important correspondence on behalf of the company. Additionally, a registered agent must promptly forward such materials to an active company, such as an LLC, corporation, or any other entity type. Now, Boston Private Equity and Trust, and remember it is a trust, a front, is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And, trusts are used to hide money, just saying. If this giant multi-billion-dollar corporation was to receive a notice for an audit or any legal document, the paperwork would be served at that dinky little office. It has a little whiteboard on the door because no one is even there. Registered agents for dodgy little companies look like that. And gigantic drug money laundering fronts. not a multi-billion-dollar legitimate financial services company and trust. No one raised an eyebrow because New Hampshire is run by a cartel and no one expects any auditing anytime, ever. Boston Private, as acquired by Silicon Valley Bank, is Boston Private Bank and Trust Company, and its operating agent is CT Corporation System in Concord, New Hampshire. Let me read from the Silicon Valley Bank website about its exciting multi-billion-dollar acquisition. Quote, SVB's vision is to be the premier financial partner for the innovation economy, providing companies, entrepreneurs and their investors the services they need to succeed via 4 core businesses: commercial banking, investment banking, private banking and wealth management and fund management. With the acquisition of Boston Private, Silicon Valley Bank Private provides the guidance and solutions that fuel our clients' wealth goals and expand opportunities for today and tomorrow. End quote. Wow, so sexy, so multi-billion-ish. The company type is Foreign Profit Corporation. Foreign Profit Corporation, okay? You need to understand, this is a foreign company. It's an important distinction. The jurisdiction is New Hampshire, USA. The agent's name is CT Corporation System. The agent's address is, it can't even get a 3 Beacon Street. It's 2.5 Beacon Street in Concord, New Hampshire. It's got 2.5 because it shares an office. Now, okay, have a look at that beautiful multi-billion-dollar headquarters of a multi-billion-dollar acquisition by Silicon Valley Bank in 2021. Now you know why Forbes said for 5 years running it's the best bank ever. Well, until a few days ago. As we know in the Pandora Papers, the drug money launderers set up limited liability companies and trust companies that look just like this dodgy little shithole office that can't even afford more than 2.5 in their address, meaning they share the office with someone else. Come on. Silicon Valley Bank is a drug money laundering bank with strong ties to Israel. It was doing very well as it exclaimed its commitment to climate change and equity and inclusion and all the other Davos central banker buzzwords. Reminds me of this guy.
Okay, the guy you see next to me is the most generous billionaire in the world, and I found him.
Hi, my name is Sam, and this is my story.
Global warming.
It's one of the biggest problems that we have to tackle together as a world.
COVID-19 preparedness.
We have to be ready for the next pandemic.
Neglected tropical diseases.
More than 1 billion people suffer from them. We have to eliminate these diseases.
And of course, animal welfare.
Animals deserve to live just like we do. It's also why I'm vegan.
It was named top bank for 5 years running and it collapsed overnight. It doesn't happen anywhere, anytime, ever. It collapsed because the large account managers realized that the Mike Gill revelations and a congressional inquiry was coming, and they jumped ship immediately, crashing the bank. Now, there is an angle no one is looking at. Please know the Israeli angle is my speculation, not Mike's. He only comments on things he knows about and is sure of. And he is damn sure Silicon Valley Bank bought Boston Private because it is flush with drug money, and in a panic, the account holders are pulling out before they lose it to the US government and the coming inquiry. As for me, I've been studying this Likud beast for 20 years, and I don't need the paperwork to know what I'm looking at. I just want to clarify that. The Israeli angle is my speculation, but of course, I don't call it speculation. I know exactly what it is, and so do all my friends. We know what it is. Mike Gill's expertise is in mortgages and finance, and he caught the dummy corporations and trusts fronting the giant money laundering network in New Hampshire. This includes Rhino Governor Sununu and his banking commissioner, Jerry Little, who makes sure no one audits the banks in New Hampshire. The Pandora Papers identified New Hampshire with $932 billion in drug money as the largest money laundering operation in the world, and Mike Gill exposed it fully at huge cost to himself and his $300 million plus business they took from him. It's lucky they didn't take his life, or his kids. Before Mike Gill gives a full rundown on the significance of this Silicon Valley banking collapse and its New Hampshire roots, we need to remember the three amigos that run it to this day, the drug cartel's money laundering operation. The same people who assisted in the destruction of Mike Gill and the truth, and countless endless lives ruined by fentanyl, some ruined to the point of death. Dick Anagnost, Bill Greiner, and Andrew Cruz. These people are mass murderers, no mistake. All the people that support them are mass murderers. End of story. We are going to get back to them later in this video. But first, 15 minutes with Mike Gill, who is an expert in the biggest drug cartel operation and money laundering clearinghouse in the world. And you'll also note, despite the incredible story he carries on his shoulders all the way to General Flynn, James O'Keefe and the top rungs of the Trump outer guard, whose sole existence is to prevent Donald Trump from speaking to people that matter. None of the large-scale occult media will talk to Mike Gill or acknowledge his existence. And all those big names share one thing in common. They love Benjamin Netanyahu. Let us attend.
In cyber is a real domain of power. In cyber is a real domain of power.
So let's say theoretically, you've got some good rackets going on, done some illegal gun running, trafficked some drugs, robbed a few banks or jewelry stores, done some insider trading. The point is, you're a professional criminal who's only loyal to one thing, the holy dollar. You've got some illegal businesses on your hands that are doing really well, and now you're literally drowning in cash. Great, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, a lot has happened. Let's get straight in with Mike Gill, a man with over 30 years of experience in the financial sector. He knows exactly what's going on. We can't say 100%, but how about 90% sure that Silicon Valley Bank was in fact laundering masses of drug money through Boston Private Bank and Trust and its little registered agent over there in Concord, New Hampshire. Let's cross now to Mike and talk about the fastest takedown of money out of any bank in history. Mike, take it away.
Listen, I can tell the people out there I'm 100% sure. And I can tell you I've been doing this for over 30 years. I ran the largest volume mortgage brokerage firm in the country. Following the bond market and the moves was exactly what made me number one in the country. I would work with Fannie Mae in anticipating the movements in interest rates. So this is not what they're trying to have you believe. This was stimulated by a situation. When you move $42 billion within 48 hours, that is a reaction. That is a reaction to something that happened. In other words, this didn't happen to another bank in the country. Now, are other banks a little nervous? Well, two things. One, what's their exposure to drug cartels? And then maybe they're reactionary. But I can tell you this, we have a direct connection. The Silicon Valley Bank is a part of a group, Silicon Valley Bank Group. Look at who the group is. Boston Private Bank and Trust. Okay, that is part of the bank. They are a New Hampshire corporation. Their business is foreign investment, foreign profit. Okay? Their agent is CT Systems Corporation, or CT Corporation Systems. It's a front. That's their agent. This is how Pandora Papers work and why $932 billion is being hidden in assets through those agents. Remember? Trust companies, dummy corporation, LLCs. You'll see a picture of CT Corporation. It's inside of a warehouse with a half of an address. We found it. Now you ready? This bank and trust, Boston Bank and Trust, guess what? You know who the directors were previous? Two separate attorney generals of the state of New Hampshire, Foster and Delaney. What did I tell you that they ran for cover for the cartel? What did Shaheen and Hassan put together? Hassan appointed Foster as the AG. They protected the money laundering network. They are literally directors in this company. Griner goes back to this company. It is drug money. Now, here's the real question. What made them move? And they moved fast. Could it be the investigation of the Pandora Papers? Because those corrupt politicians in Washington have the evidence and have the names. Listen, if a small New Hampshire public radio has the names of Granite State Recovery, they have the names of AutoFair, Perspective Trust, means those are cartel assets and they're being sold. Could the money be being moved? Secondly, are they afraid of Trump? Trump has the evidence and he's going to drop a bomb. Think about this. This is exactly how this would move. We are talking about a California bank with a direct line to the state of New Hampshire, to the money laundering network of the deep state, the protection of that with the two former AGs and the drug cartel. Of course it's this. They got to run on their money. The only question is what stimulated it. That's what we're waiting on. Now, don't forget, primary bank that's owned by the cartel directly. I think
Bill
they
Griner.
have four offices.
And that's run by
That's
Bill
a regional
Griner.
bank.
That's run by Bill Griner?
Excuse me?
That's run by Bill Griner?
Bill Griner, right. Bill Griner, who's associated with this private Boston Bank and Trust. He is the chairperson for Primary Bank. That is a regional bank. So we know other regional banks, don't we? And that could make a run. Could suddenly Primary Bank have to empty all its accounts out? It's all cartel money.
And he's associated.
Think
and
this runs on regional banks.
And he's associated with Jeb Bush.
Griner is the money guy. Remember, that's what makes him the chairperson of Primary Bank. He goes back politically to Jeb Bush, and he gets in trouble for what? Counting money vouchers, cutting them with a pair of scissors, and stealing money. That's who Griner is. And now Griner is also the guy who buys politicians. Well, let's see. We've got finance and politicians. Isn't that what we said who he was? The money handler for the cartel, and the fact that he was buying politicians. Man, people, this walks like a duck and quacks like a duck. And we just reached from California to the state of New Hampshire to a little agent in a warehouse in Concord. That is what a front looks like. This is the poster child of what Pandora Papers is.
In the United States, the instrument is a non-charitable purpose trust. For now, these trusts are available in Delaware, New Hampshire, South Dakota, and Wyoming. In the near future, you can expect them to spread across the nation. So what can be done?
Mike, on that note, I remember in the Pandora Papers documentary, they went looking for these giant corporations to try and get an inside footing into some of these corporations and make contact with them. And they were going to these little Scottish Highland village where two 78-year-old people were the registered agent. I mean, this is just classic Pandora Papers.
How about this? And people, listen to this. When I gave my evidence to the minority leader for the Ways and Means Committee investigating the Pandora Papers, what I was told was the first 5 businesses that they investigated turned out to be empty offices in buildings. Just like this. Not a desk, not a pencil. You know what they had? A nameplate. This CT Systems Corporation, they have a nameplate and a marker board on the door. You know what that marker board is for? If you happen to show up, you take a crayon and you write the fact on the door that you showed up, just in case they want to know who's stopping by.
Yeah, it should remind people that a lot of these registered agents are very dodgy because there's a lot of really dodgy, crappy LLC companies out there made by mom and pop people and people avoiding tax. This is not some mom and pop outfit. This is a gigantic multi-billion-dollar Boston private banking and trust. This is a private bank.
That is part of as Silicon Valley Bank. They are one and the same. This is an asset. It's Silicon Valley Bank Group. This is the group. This in one day, this goes from good standing to bad standing. Now think about this. Even the agent, are you ready? The agent is an LLC. So if you happen to grab the agent, which you're gonna better hope you have a search warrant, he's an LLC, and they're gone. So there's levels of not just protection, of deception. That's what this is. They are hiding their money. Why are they hiding their money? Because it was drug money and they're forced to hide it. Or it's corrupt politicians. Trust me, they didn't build this network without the help of the politicians. Who gives them banking license? Who gives them casino license? Who gives them license to own treatment centers? It is the protection network that gives them credibility, gives them the mechanism to be able to hide their money. That's what we're seeing. This is going on massively across the country. So think about this. Is there a situation if the cartel money suddenly pulls out of certain banks? You're right, there are. But how much of this money is interwoven into these businesses that own? How many of these banks are really cartel banks?
And I'd like to ask, what was Peter Thiel doing, laughing about that bank? And there's a gentleman writing about, who's a friend of Peter Thiel, saying that linking it directly to Netanyahu and Likud as literally intimating they're drug money laundering banks. Mike, just very briefly, did you read the article from MSN which really points out that this is the most ridiculous level of money withdrawal? It was all done literally at once. Literally at once. They make the point in the MSN article that they've never seen so much money pulled so fast. This is unique. Just a final comment on that.
I did see that. And that's what I'm telling you. It was an event spark, not an economic spark. It wasn't the spread of interest rates. It was an event. So, and what no one's telling you is what was the event. And think about this. To be on the same page, meaning it was singular. I believe there was just a few, and it was cartel money that moved suddenly, which tells me there could be an investigation. Maybe it is Trump. Maybe they are getting these Pandora papers out. I can tell you, I believe Congress is tipping these people off. Think about this. Just as those cartels knew to sell auto fare, just as they knew to grant a state recovery, somebody tipped off Silicon Valley Bank and the cartel and said, they're on you. Think about this. Give me another explanation, because I can't think of one. And I've been doing this for 30, 35 years. That sparked was a reaction. And the reaction is what nobody's telling you. But what we know is we just showed a direct pipeline from the state of New Hampshire to the state of California to that bank with the cartel. Now you tell me, what's the chances? I'm a money guy. You know what the odds are? It can't happen unless it is the cartel.
I agree, Mike, 100%. And also on February the 17th, we know for a fact a very high-level Pentagon official got your details. February the 17th. And when we say high, we mean like really, really high. God willing, the men in green who are above law enforcement and completely out to some degree from that scene, those bright young colonels and all those people in the managerial levels. Remember the 6 state troopers that came forward out of New Hampshire, risking their lives, their careers to assist in stopping this fentanyl outbreak. Brave police officers. They're everywhere. They're in the FBI. They're in the CIA. They're in the DEA. They're sitting there. They're bright young colonels in the Pentagon. They're angry. They're seeing what's going on. We spark this brush fire and we spark it now. They haven't come out after us yet. We've just had a few idiots and loons coming on causing trouble, but we haven't been attacked yet for multiple reasons. They can't mention Mike Gill's name, they'll find the materials. They certainly can't mention Brendan O'Connell's name because they're going to find another bunch of materials on Israel high technology and espionage combined with this issue. And they are really, really worried, but it's going to break. The ground is crumbling. Keep it up. They've only one place to go, and that's war. But I'm going to bet money on the biggest, most powerful military-industrial complex in the world. Let's just hope it's not completely backdoored and there's still hope. And there is still hope. Have faith even in the ups and downs and upheavals. There will be fear porn everywhere. Thank you for your service, Mike. Thank you for all your work. Let's cut off and let's get back to the rest of the video. Okay, now we've heard from Mike. Now let's quickly go over the roles of the New Hampshire cartel operators. We'll also show you the political operators who protect them to this day, and in fact for the last 30 years. Mike Gill, as you know, exposed a viper's nest in New Hampshire. The three main day-to-day runners of the largest drug and money laundering operation in history were exposed by an initial collaboration between Mike Gill, Aaron Day and James O'Keefe. In 2014, Day and O'Keefe, as well as Ben Swan, were already investigating Bill Greiner and his chairmanship of Primary Bank, New Hampshire. Greiner was being investigated for his corrupt political activities that were protecting the New Hampshire drug cartel. Greiner was also close to Jeb Bush, and the Bush family have a history of drug cartel activity, as we remember Mena, Arkansas, the Bushes and the Clintons. You remember all that. By 2016, Day and O'Keefe had bumped into Mike Gill and his own independent investigations, which included a massive civilian information network that Mike had developed over many years. This included 6 state troopers, honourable men, risking their lives to expose the drug trafficking and murder of the children of New Hampshire. Through this incredible private informant network, the intimate details of the cartel's activities were recorded with witnesses in incredible detail, which led to the largest fentanyl bust in history, all from the work of Mike Gill. As an example of how Mike works, here he is at the New Hampshire Executive Council with a soon-to-be governor, Chris Sununu. Yep, that's Chris Sununu on his right. This is around September 2016, just as the relationship with James O'Keefe and Aaron Day was ending. Sununu had the goods on Democratic power brokers Bill and Janine Shaheen, Bill Greiner, Andrew Cruz, and Dick Anagnost. And he would go on to become governor within a few weeks. This is just one of the many high-level confrontations Mike Gill has had with state and federal authorities, just to give you a taste. Remember, Mike had been placing these people on billboards, calling them drug dealers and money launderers and totally corrupt for years. They were desperate to have him take the $50 million settlement. He was getting away with it because Mike himself was powerful and had plenty of money to push the issue. And of course, Mike was fearless, totally. He's 1 in a million. But Mike could not live with himself. Hundreds were dying every year from drug overdoses in New Hampshire alone, let alone the entire United States. Do you seriously think $50 million could assuage that guilt, that conscience? Not a chance. The ramifications of such deep and top-level corruption could not stand. The arrogance of these people. And then, you know, they met Mike Gill.
Try to keep it brief, but I will keep your attention, I promise. Now, I haven't heard too many people who've been in the mortgage business sitting down and talking to you. So my name is Mike Gill, and I own the Mortgage Specialist, and I've owned them for 26 years. Now, we were the #1 broker, not just only in New Hampshire, but in the United States, multiple years. In addition, Fannie Mae has recognized me, and I've done their training videos. So you could say I'm an expert in the mortgage business. Now, Mr. Perlow, who recently resigned. You may remember I just called him a drug launderer. He didn't dispute that. He resigned instead. Mr. Perlow, we spoke, Mr. Pappas, you brought up Primary Bank. Mr. Sununu, you brought up FRM. Well, you know who reported the scandal of FRM to the AG's office? Well, that would be myself. Listen, did you notice the drug dealers didn't want to sue me? Call me a drug dealer and see if I don't sue you. Right? And everything I'm saying about you and you, I can verify. Right? That's the plan. There's no mistakes here. An insurance defender is the banking commissioner. Listen, I have full consent orders from these people. They've offered me $50 million to be quiet. Now, I have that. I put it on the internet. You'd like to see it, Mr. Sununu? Would you like to see it? No, I didn't think so. So it's all there. Liberty International. Right. All I have to do is be quiet. But they're protecting the people that are killing our children. They own a treatment center. This is involved. This is the laundering of that money. Any questions? I didn't think so.
After this confrontation, as Mike Gill was prevented from running for governor, James O'Keefe and Aaron Day simply melted away as Mike refused yet again another $50 million offer he was expected to take. By combining their investigations, both parties had cornered the beast, which included the money laundering and the protection network. Dick Anagnost is the head of the drug cartel and has been for the last 30 years. Anagnost is the largest real estate developer in the state. He owns hospitals, a chain of drug treatment centres and pharmacies. These are in fact part of his drug distribution network. These people have zero shame or fear of indictment. They deal the drugs and then they run treatment centres to treat the drug addicts. I mean, I can't. I'm speechless. And you should be speechless too. These people have zero shame. Anagnost also owns a chain of casinos across the state that facilitates the drug money laundering. All the while, he's been arrested multiple times for drug trafficking with associated indictments, busts in the millions, but he has never gone to jail. How does he own and run all these sensitive operations? Andrew Cruz was the frontman for AutoFair, owned by Anagnost. This was a distribution network by moving fentanyl using cars and car carriers.
Save big at AutoFair Ford and shop one of the largest new Ford inventories in New Hampshire.
But it was also part of the money laundering network by hiding the cash within the inventory of the vehicles. The money was also hidden in the financing of the cars via Primary Bank, of which Bill Greiner was the chairman and owned by the cartel. AutoFair was exposed in the Pandora Papers as money laundering. Andrew Cruz sold the company because of the exposure and became the lottery commissioner, which supervises the casinos and licenses them. I mean, really? I know, you must be laughing by now, but it gets better. Bill Shaheen, husband of Senator Jeanine Shaheen and former U.S. attorney working for the FBI, provided the protection for the cartel. This he accomplished by acting as a cutout between the cartel and the Boston FBI. This same Bill Shaheen acted as the lawyer for Ghislaine Maxwell as she ran to New Hampshire for safety, having such intimate knowledge of the money laundering network. It was the same corrupt Boston FBI that arrested her. Of note is also Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX and their office in New Hampshire, and the fact his biggest political contribution went to Bill and Jeanine Shaheen's protege, Senator Maggie Hassan, followed by the New Hampshire Democratic Party. How interesting. From 2011 to 2016, Mike Gill placed billboards exposing the corruption of his former lawyer, Alex Walker, and Bill Shaheen, the protection for the cartel. In subsequent billboards, Mike exposed Andrew Cruz, Dick Anagnost, and Bill Greiner as the heads of the cartel, the day-to-day managers. For years, they did nothing. Oh, that's a lie. They actually did some things, like 3 or 4 times. They offered Mike $50 million to walk away and take down the billboards. 3 times, and then a final 4th time informally, in court. 3 times in paperwork, and 4th orally, in court. $50 million. It's on the record, 6 years total of exposing these people, and they waited almost 6 years to take him to court. There's a good reason for that. You think this is so hard to believe? Here is the initial settlement and release paperwork and the email accompanying one of the offers. I'll read it to you. This is Mike's lawyer, Mike Barousis, replying to the insurer's lawyers operating on behalf of Bill Shaheen and Alex Walker. Quote, "My client is willing to settle this matter for $50 million. There are a number of conditions attached to the settlement offer. However, if the first condition is not agreed upon by all parties, then the remaining conditions are moot. The first condition is that Mr. Gill will not agree to the confidentiality agreement that has been proposed or any other agreements dealing with confidentiality. Should you agree to that amount and the first condition, we can discuss this settlement further." Mike has all the original documents and we will be releasing them in an indexed and highly navigatable document very soon to be used by the public to lobby relevant government departments to investigate and indict this network. Mike was again offered the $50 million in a court hearing in 2016. Mike refused again, and he was led away to jail on contempt charges for the 4th time in a row.
Guys, gotta get this on camera. Quick, Greg, move. Move, Greg. Get it on camera. That's expected. That's what Trump too. Get in front of these guys, Greg. Face shots.
I need to repeat this to you, just in case you don't quite understand what happened. Because let's face it, it is so utterly bewildering that this could have gone on so brazenly for so long, so we need to repeat things. But just keep this in mind. You all know about Mena, Arkansas, Barry Seal, Iran-Contra, Colonel Oliver North, guns for drugs, Gary Webb exposing the Dark Alliance, crack cocaine on the streets of Los Angeles. You understand all that. It's a matter of the public record. We all know it's true. So why are you having problems with New Hampshire? It's just that the corruption just goes so deep and so far, from the top to the bottom. So I'll just repeat, Mike Gill has named and shamed the top business and political personalities of New Hampshire as running a giant planetary drug money laundering operation and drug trafficking operation, including child sex trafficking, and they are offering him $50 million to walk away. They send the trucks down to Laredo, Texas, they pick up the fentanyl, they fill it full of human desperation, children and grown adults, and ship them back into the United States. This is just guns for drugs, Mena, Arkansas, Iran-Contra all over again. Except this time it's in Mexico, and it's not in Colombia, and it's not in Mena, Arkansas, it's in New Hampshire. And no one has to invade Mexico. They need to invade New Hampshire and a lot of other places, including Arizona too. And we'll get into these things later. Do you understand? On the record, not in dispute even by them. They have never challenged that settlement offer offered 4 times. That settlement is a signed confession of guilt, as well as the evidence list given by U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling to Mike, listing all the extensive evidence and documentation Mike had gathered over 10 years, which went all the way to the Attorney General Jeff Sessions in 2017. This is why they went after Trump non-stop on the half-witted Russia collusion investigation. There was zero hope of impeachment. They were threatening each other with what they knew about New Hampshire. A secret so grand it would threaten to bring down the elite establishment order of the United States, from top-level politicians to top-level bankers, the IRS, TIGTA, or the Treasury Inspector General of Taxation Administration, whole DEA and FBI divisions, and state police, with endless reverberations across the political, social, economic, and legal fields. Let me give you one exacting example of the depths of this corruption proven by Mike Gill in documents and recorded calls. Who oversees the IRS, an extremely powerful body that doesn't need a warrant to get into your bank accounts and make your life hell? Who rules the IRS, supervises it? It is an Inspector General, like there is an Inspector General overseeing the US intelligence community. TIGTA, or the Treasury Inspector General of Taxation Administration, are above the IRS, and they are the US Treasury, right there with Janet Yellen. Mike Gill had a long 3.5-year plus relationship with a TIGTA agent called Tom Morley, M-O-R-L-E-Y. Remember, TIGTA stands for Treasury Inspector General of Taxation. They rule the IRS. They are an extremely powerful organization, and like me, I've never heard of them. Why this 3.5-year plus relationship? Because Mike has been making formal complaints of complete corruption of the IRS, working hand in hand with a major drug and money laundering operation operating in New Hampshire and directly linked to the Pandora Papers and $932 billion. Tom Morley was his contact, and Tom Morley stated to Mike that indeed this was the, quote, worst case of corruption in the IRS's history, end quote. But Tom Morley was not working to expose the giant corruption. He was planting spies within Mike's office to set Mike up, and this is what happened. Let me set the scene before the recorded call that Aaron Day and Project Veritas took in September 2016. As Mike had been refusing the $50 million shut-up money by this time, it was decided to put pressure on Mike for more fraud within the IRS, and several phone calls were to follow. These phone calls were all synchronized.
Asshole, see him? How about all those millions? You want to tell everybody how corrupt you run? You were talking to Jim Wheat. Did you know that we got the CC from Brentwood Court that had all the people you were working?
Can I have an escort to my vehicle?
Yeah, he's the criminal. Go ahead, have an escort to his vehicle.
I'm not kidding.
I'm not kidding.
I am in fear of this lunatic.
He took an offer for $50 million. Perfect. You guys know who I am, right? That's the guy who offered $50 million to shut my mouth and was running with Bill Shaheen.
Understand, the attempts made were in some ways amateurish and oozed of desperation. The system that had been put in place had been so successful in paying off and blackmailing curious people into submission, they simply did not know how to handle Mike Gill, and they feared him.
Salem Police Dispatch, Stevens.
Yeah, I had an appointment today with Detective Curley at 6:30. Is he there? Is he there?
I'm not sure. I put you through to his desk. He didn't answer.
No.
Could you check? Yeah, it's important. Could you check to see if he's there? Another filthy cop.
Hello, Detective Curley. Line's recorded.
Yeah, this is Joe.
Where are you, Detective?
Excuse me?
You're supposed to come and visit Joe Karen at 6:30. Where the are you?
Oh, excuse me. I don't know who this is.
Mike Gill, running for governor. How about this? You're trying to extort another controller, just like before. Oh, you hung up, asshole, huh? There you go. State of corruption.
Remember, Mike wasn't just anybody. He was worth at that stage $300 to $400 million. They had thrown every government department at Mike from the state and federal level. He was scrupulous and he was squeaky clean. Mike had been training to be a Catholic priest, his mother a devout Catholic and close to the local diocese. He lived for his family, especially his children. At 6 feet 4 inches tall and fearless, he did not tolerate bullies, ever. He is one in a million. They were simply stumped at what to do with him. It was clear that they believed he was something bigger. He openly taunted them in giant billboards. He made videos, sitting down with shotguns on the table, mocking them, urging them to come over.
You have seen me exercise my right to free speech. Well, I'm home all alone. You've broken into my house many times. Except for I'm also going to exercise my right to bear arms. So you're welcome to come by. Just one of us isn't leaving. Thank you.
He had instant cash reserves of $40+ million and a business worth upwards of $400 million. He kept meticulous records and his mind was like a steel trap. They could not blackmail him and they could not pay him off. 2 assassination attempts had not even fazed Mike. He was beyond that by now, after years of harassment. By 2016, they believed he was in direct contact with the Trump campaign. This is where they were by this stage, September 2016. They were out of tricks and they gave it one last go in late September 2016, and both Aaron Day and James O'Keefe with Project Veritas were present. Earlier that day, Mike had received 22 sealed IRS letters mailed to him in a FedEx bag by an accountant called Curtis Morley. What they didn't know at this stage was that Curtis Morley is the brother of Tim Morley, the TIGTA agent that Mike was dealing with. Yeah, it gets better. Mike did not know who this man was and had never had any dealings with him. At that exact moment, Mike was rung by IRS agent Patrick Dillon. This was coordinated. Dillon exclaimed that Mike had not been cooperating with the IRS and they needed to meet. Why had he not been responding to IRS correspondence? He was not responding because he had never received the mail until that very moment, literally. The call was threatening and not recorded. It was presumed they were going to lean on Mike again with serious charges of not cooperating with the IRS. Mike called up Project Veritas and Aaron Day and they all huddled around Mike's business telephone, and Mike called Treasury agent Tom Morley. Tom Morley told Mike he would be passing the case to the top level of TIGTA, Tim Camus, C-A-M-U-S, Deputy Inspector General of Investigations. He gave Mike his number and hung up the phone. Only he had not hung up his phone. By an act of God, Project Veritas recorded Tom Morley speaking with his boss, Tim Camus, and stating he gave him nothing and told him nothing. He also added that he was going to tell Mike they had an undercover in his office.
I don't care. It's my concern. I don't want to wrong thing. They're the wrong thing so I said nothing. I did nothing but give them back. In one capacity, told me about something like a memo email. Good times, Tim. This is going to be your case. I'm going to call him, Chris, and I'm going to tell him, like, we have a plan. We've had an undercover interview.
Let's spend a few minutes with Mike on the phone to another level of the IRS, making a formal complaint against the whole process. This will set up the amazing words you are going to hear. A top-level Washington, D.C. deep state employee at the highest level.
So I'm just trying to get this straight. I'm just so the bankruptcy to cover up the crime as well. Okay. So Mike, there's a lot of information. I'd love to talk to you. I don't know where the heck you are, but I'd love to talk to you in person. Well, we are talking. There's no hidden agenda. Yeah, but I just want to talk. How about this? This is what I want you to do. Okay. I want you to call U.S. Attorney Lowen. I want you to call Volvatola. Andrew. Right. So you know who he is. I've seen him on TV. He wouldn't know me if we passed each other on the street. So you remembered his first name from television, huh? Yeah. Oh, hey, listen. Call him again. Say, can I look at all the evidence that Mike Gill given you? You know, about all of it. And then I want you to talk to Tom Morley of Titka, too. Tom, yeah, okay. And then you can talk to Tim Campus and remind them, and they know, because I reported that to Titka, that we have them on a recorded conversation saying they have plants in my office. Those same plants are now witnesses. Mike, slow down. I got to be careful with Tom because Curtis is involved too, right? Curtis, well, I would talk to Tom because the FBI is on it now. Now, Curtis is the accountant that happens to be his brother that was intercepting my mail for 3 years. Now, we have that mail. It's intercepting the mail, okay. Right, it was all sealed for 3 years. And all that mail now is if you talk to Andrew Lowen, U.S. Attorney Lowen, took it from me in camera by hand in front of witnesses, the mail. That mail is now part of a mail fraud complaint, and that is with U.S. Attorney, that is now with Special Agent Paul Ventura of the FBI in the Chelsea's office. Mike, how'd you get a hold of Andrew Lowen? He's like the U.S. Attorney, he's like the top dog. How'd you get a conversation with the top dog? The top dog, because the top dog knew exactly who I was. And when I walked into his office, he met me in person, in camera, under witness. So this, and how about this? You ready? The top dog has given me, through a 91A, an evidence list. It's all signed. In fact, if you go to the video, right? In fact, you can go to the last video, you'll see that Lowen received the evidence and given me the receipt of all the evidence. Oh, wow, okay. Right, so there's no question about it. See, Lowen knew exactly what was happening.
This shows the levels of coordination between the IRS and the top level of TIGTA to get control of Mike Gill and force him into signing the $50 million deal to silence him. The top levels of the IRS and the Treasury Inspector General of Taxation are deep in on this money laundering and drug operation. This is the Treasury itself. This is Janet Yellen territory. We're trying to get across this isn't isolated. It's the whole damn system. They didn't turn a blind eye. They didn't try to feign they didn't know. They were all actively involved at the very, very top.
I understand your position, Mr. Gill. I'm going to issue a...
No, I'm telling you, Judicial Watch in America understands my position. Okay. And the corruption that goes through this courthouse, in the courthouse, people understand. Listen, there's a train coming right over you.
You're out of order. Sit. Please have a seat.
No, I'm not sitting. We're leaving.
That's fine, sir.
You are corrupt. And your associates think you are.
That's fine,
and I will make it public. So I'm glad you're offended. You should be. I wouldn't answer their calls. It wouldn't return their calls. There you go, you piece of shit.
This will literally bring the system down. What happens after that? I have no idea. But I imagine war. The usual option. Regardless, we push ahead anyway. Once Mike had refused their $50 million for the last time, they took him to a totally rigged court that was a laughingstock of corruption and took $274 million off Mike. No witnesses allowed, no evidence allowed, and the judge refusing to even acknowledge the repeated requests for witness protection, including 6 state troopers. Look at the arrogance of this judge. They refused a jury trial, but when they realized Mike had traveled to Washington to meet with the DOJ, they brought in a jury and put on a little show trial with mucho crocodile tears. Oh, look at this pathetic fentanyl-dealing, mass-murdering piece of bad acting garbage, Andrew Cruz.
If I don't do it, who will? Somebody had to turn around and stop the bullet.
That's why Andy Cruz said he decided to file a defamation lawsuit against Michael Gill. Cruz, the CEO of a major car dealership in New Hampshire, was targeted by Gill on electronic billboards and through social media, accusing him of being involved in criminal activity.
It was a just absolutely frustrating moment of trying to find out to the answer why. And honestly, I still can't answer that. Why he's done what he's done, I can't.
Cruz is one of 3 local businessmen, including banker Bill Greiner and developer Dick Anagnost, who are seeking damages against Gill. Gill, who attorneys also say runs a very successful mortgage company, launched multimedia attacks against all 3 men, which their lawyers say was not backed up by a shred of evidence.
And he used his money and his talents to taunt. He used his money and talents to threaten, and he used his electronic billboards as a whipping post.
Gill chose not to attend this first day of testimony. The court has already ruled that Gill is liable for the damages. It's now up to the jury to determine a dollar amount. Cruz said the false claims have hurt his family and his business. His wife says the hardest part has been explaining the attacks to their daughters.
It's been tough.
Were there any easy answers to those questions?
There's no easy answers because it doesn't make sense.
Attorney Stephen Gordon said that he has not yet decided exactly how much money he will ask the jury to award in damages. Reporting live, I'm Andy Hirschberger, WMUR News 9.
These wonderful human beings who murdered children as young as 14 then took that $274 million and claimed to have put it back into the treatment centers from which they deal their drugs and rip off the US taxpayer with their Medicaid fraud and fake treatment numbers.
About a month ago with Aaron Day, the settlement was north of 7 figures. You don't settle for that unless you feel that there's a reason to settle for that.
The 3 plaintiffs brought a large chunk of the proceeds to Hope for New Hampshire Recovery, presenting the nonprofit with a $225,000 windfall.
It's the first step towards total vindication of all of these allegations, but over and above, it's a great feeling to give all of this money back so that Hope can continue its great work.
The businessmen say they appeared on the notorious billboards shortly after announcing their financial backing for Hope for New Hampshire Recovery in January last year, so believe their donation is fitting.
It was important for us to let the community know we're standing behind Hope. We believe they're doing great work within our community, and we're going to stand behind them.
They run the drugs, they launder the money, they kill your kids, they fund political campaigns, and they walk away as victims. None of this is going to stand. The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and its New Hampshire money laundering roots will break open the case. Corrupt politicians sensing the congressional investigation based around the Pandora Papers are tipping off the cartel, and they are pulling their money out en masse in a panic and selling their assets. This is all just the tip of the central banking cartel, Israeli Likud, drugs, guns and sex trafficking rings run worldwide. Kay Griggs warned us of this network way back in 1977. A foreign power has completely co-opted the United States establishment order and is a hair's breadth away from bringing the United States to its knees. This is why aspects of the Israeli elites have been so arrogant for so long, sucking the United States dry again and again, seemingly beyond account, and having US politicians bow like dogs at their arrival, scaring and cowering Jewish communities around the world with their thugs. Hear the well-reported words of Benjamin Netanyahu in the Finks Bar, Tel Aviv, in 1990. If we get caught, they will just replace us with persons of the same cloth. So it does not matter what you do. America is a golden calf, and we will suck it dry, chop it up, and sell it off piece by piece until there is nothing left but the world's biggest welfare state that we will create and control. Why? Because it is the will of God, and America is big enough to take the hit, so we can do it again and again and again. This is why Netanyahu and Putin and Xi and the German banking elites were forming the Eurasian Economic Union and BRICS trading bloc, forcing the United States out of Eurasia and the Middle East, dividing the planet into 4 sections, the new multipolar world order, demanded by Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Klaus Schwab, and even Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran.
Politically, the driving forces for this political transformation, of course, is the transition into a multipolar world, which has a tendency to make our world much more fragmented.
علائم زیادی وجود داره که نظم کنونی جهان داره تغییر پیدا میکنه. نظم جدیدی بر جهان حاکم خواهد شد. نقش ما ایرانی ها، جایگاه ما ایرانی ها در این نظم جدید چیه؟ یه سوال مهمه. نمیشه به دقت گفتش که نظم این چنینی نیست، اما میشه یه خطوطی رو ترسیم کرد. یه خطوط اساسی هست که این نظم جدید مطمئناً این خطوط اساسی درش هست. اولش عبارت است از انزوای آمریکا. در نظم جدید جهانی آمریکا منزوی خواهد بود، برخلاف اونی که در 20 سال پیش بوش پدر گفت امروز تنها قدرت مسلط دنیا آمریکاست. خط اساسی دوم انتقال قدرت سیاسی و اقتصادی و فرهنگی و علمی حتی از غرب به آسیا. آسیا خواهد شد مرکز دانش، مرکز اقتصاد، مرکز قدرت سیاسی، مرکز قدرت نظامی.
This is why. So you just remember all those Putin groupies and those Xi groupies who were pushing the BRICS. They were pushing the World Economic Forum agenda the whole time. The whole time. This is why they attack America endlessly. This is Julian Assange. It's Edward Snowden. Their intent was not to reform America. Their intent was not to make the world a better place. Their intent was part of a program to bring down the United States. Bring it to its knees. That's what's been going on for the last 10 years at least. Well, some would say for the last 250 years. This is why Xi Jinping, under orders from the World Economic Forum and central bank cartel bodies, released a biological weapon to bring down the United States economy and force it out of Eurasia. Donald Trump did not comply, and Heinz Kissinger and Rupert Murdoch have been trying to get rid of him ever since. Remember this from the South China Morning Post, 20th of April 2020. Remember this article, quote, "The US dollar is standing in the way to a truly global monetary response to the coronavirus crisis, unless the pandemic becomes so widespread and costly as to overwhelm US opposition." Now you understand all the people pushing Putin and Xi and the BRICS. This is the central banking cartel. These people are actors, and they have an army of sycophants running around pushing it. I suggest they think real hard about continuing to do this. A vast cleanup operation may soon be about to take place. The nerve to try and take out the United States military, well, now you know why they were so cocky. Their bluff has been called and the war rages in Ukraine for control of Eurasia and the prevention of the formation of the Eurasian Economic Union, even as Beijing tries to form a bloc against the United States, bringing Saudi and Iran together. They cannot do this on their own. They are working as subcontractors for their boss, the borderless loan sharks. The City of London international banking cartel wants the United States brought to its knees and its constitutional freedom snuffed out. Forever. A boot stamping on the face of humanity. Forever. Do you understand? Do you seriously think Xi Jinping or any of these clowns can possibly stand up to the economic and military might of the United States? Why are they doing this? Why are they so cocky? Because they have the secret that will bring the whole system down. They are not going to get away with it. We cannot allow the likes of General Flynn and others to prevent this information from Mike Gill getting directly to Donald Trump. In 2017, Trump ordered Corey Lewandowski, his former chief of staff, to bypass the Boston FBI and get Mike into a meeting with the U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling. Let's listen to the exchange between Mike Gill and the utterly corrupt, vile IRS agent Jeremiah Devlin. Remember that guy's name. He's one of the little demons, and he is going into a FEMA camp.
So I'm just trying to get this straight. I'm just so the bankruptcy to cover up the crime as well. Okay. So Mike, there's a lot of information. I'd love to talk to you. I don't know where the heck you are, but I'd love to talk to you in person. Well, we are talking. There's no hidden agenda. Yeah, but I just want to talk. How about this? This is what I want you to do. Okay. I want you to call U.S. Attorney Lelling. I want you to call Volatola. Andrew. Right. So you know who he is. I've seen him on TV. He wouldn't know me if we passed each other on the street. So you remembered his first name from television, huh? Yeah. Oh, hey, listen. Call him again. Say, can I look at all the evidence that Mike Gill given you? about all of it. And then I want you to talk to Tom Morley of Titka too.
Tom, yeah, okay.
And then you can talk to Tim Campus and remind them, and they know, because I reported that to Titka, that we have them on a recorded conversation saying they have plants in my office. Those same plants are now witnesses.
Mike, slow down. I gotta be careful with Tom because Curtis is involved too, right?
Curtis, well, I would talk to Tom because the FBI's on it now. Now, Curtis is the accountant that happens to be his brother that was intercepting my mail for 3 years. Now, we have that mail. It's
intercepting the mail, okay.
Right, it was all sealed for 3 years. And all that mail now is if you talk to Andrew Lullen, U.S. Attorney Lullen, took it from me in camera by hand in front of witnesses, the mail. That mail is now part of a mail fraud complaint, and that is with U.S. Attorney, that is now with Special Agent Paul Ventura of the FBI in the Chelsea's office.
Mike, how'd you get a hold of Andrew Lullen? He's like the U.S. Attorney. He's like the top dog. How'd you get a conversation with the top dog?
The top dog, because the top dog knew exactly who I was. And when I walked into his office, he met me in person, in camera, under witness. So this, and how about this? You ready? The top dog has given me, through a 91A, an evidence list. It's all signed. In fact, if you go to the video, right? In fact, you can go to the last video, you'll see that Lullen received the evidence and given me the receipt of all the evidence.
Oh, wow, okay.
Right, so there's no question about it. See, Lullen knew exactly what was happening. Lullen knew.
Not only did this face-to-face take place in U.S. Attorney Lelling's office, Lelling gave Mike a full account of all the evidence he had produced. This is gold, and they know it. The $50 million settlement offers are gold. The amount of evidence handed to top-level legal and political movers and shakers is gold. Vast swathes of this deep state swamp will need to be held and indicted. Fortunately, a vast FEMA camp system has been implemented in the United States, and there is plenty of room to house all the suspects, and there is a lot of them. The Silicon Valley bank collapse is just the beginning. We can speculate also on other things like Washingtonian Dana Hyde, who was tragically killed in a very, very strange aircraft accident where she was supposedly thrown around in an aircraft. This woman has a very, very interesting past. Very, very strange. Remember, she's flying out of New Hampshire. Even at that young age and with no work experience, she was just an extraordinarily brilliant, capable, committed person who had all the right values, said Esther Kurz, who hired Hyde for that first internship at the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. In all the many jobs she had in Washington, and she had many, she was always driven by the desire to help others. Oh, how sweet. And Dana Hyde is desperate to be buried in Israel following this tragic accident. The report continues. After 2 years as a legislative assistant at AIPAC, Hyde, who grew up in Oregon, worked on Bill Clinton's first presidential campaign and later in his White House. After getting a law degree from Georgetown, she served as counsel to the Congressional 9/11 Commission. That's interesting. She spent time both in private practice and in government, including as CEO of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, a Senate-confirmed position. Hyde's funeral on Wednesday took place at Temple Mekah in Washington and drew more than 200 people, among them National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and former Treasury Secretary Jack Lew. Hyde will be buried in Israel today. Assuming you believe she's actually dead, and I guess it's possible, like that other person who strangled himself and then shot himself in the chest with a shotgun, the man who would allow Jeffrey Epstein into the White House for Bill Clinton. This Bill Clinton-associated lady certainly had a very strange exit, although I have my doubts she did. I think she ran for home base, Israel, because that's where the money's going to, and we might see a flood of these people jumping on planes and suddenly discovering their Jewish roots. Wait for it. It's very, very interesting. This Silicon Valley bank collapse is just the beginning. The strength of the U.S. economy lies in its all-powerful military-industrial complex. It's time the United States used it, without one arm being tied behind its back, infiltrated and subverted from within and without. Only the U.S. military and you can solve this. Who dares wins. Let us attend. Good luck.
Be advised, we got zips in the wire down here. For the record, it's my call. Dump everything you've got left on my pond. I say again, expend all remaining in my perimeter. What a lovely fucking war. Bravo 6 out.
F. Scott Fitzgerald, quote, "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. One should, for example, be able to see that things are hopeless and yet be determined to make them otherwise. This philosophy fitted on to my early adult life when I saw the improbable, the implausible, often the impossible, come true."
What is our common bond truly? Freedom. Freedom. Without freedom, you can't be a Christian no matter what denomination you belong to. You can't be a Buddhist. You can't own a donut shop. You can't drive from here to Oregon. You can't be an American because that's what it's all about, and it's the only thing that it's all about, nothing else. Nothing else. It's about freedom.